Now, every week we try and pay attention to some of those individuals who, though beset by challenges that are often life-changing, find the strength and the inspiration to keep going and ultimately to overcome. In so doing, those characters provide the rest of us with reassurance about the often indomitable nature of the human spirit. This week's Great Britain is all of that. Jamie McAnsh, who has been challenged by and yet has overcome not one but two life-changing illnesses. Undaunted, he has embarked upon physical and sporting challenges that would test the mettle of the very fittest among us. Along the way, he has also embarked upon a career as a motivational speaker. He joins me now. Jamie, what a treat to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Honestly, having read about you, having looked into your story, you're 2 hours all on your own.
Yeah.
I don't know how to deal with you in a matter of minutes, but we'll have a go. Now, look, take us back. You took ill, I think, for the first time in 2014.
Yeah.
What happened?
One of the rarest things possibly that could have happened to me. I had a condition that millions of people have had every year. I had shingles, except it attacks. So shingles attacks a main nervous tract, and mine attacked my spinal column. I overcame it. I had antibiotics and creams and lotions, and that was in November 2013. But I had this niggle in my back. I just thought it was a trapped nerve. I didn't really think anything of it. And then I went to bed on the 6th of January 2014, and when I woke up on the 7th of January, I was paralysed from the waist down. During my sleep, my spine had ruptured.
You say that and you laugh.
Yeah.
What happened? What happened next?
I embarked on a hell of a journey of what can only be described as ups and downs. So it's really strange when you go through a life-changing experience like that, because you don't really know how to deal with it. There's no instruction manual, there's no guidance, no one can kind of go, you need to do this. I just kind of ended up finding myself in a situation that I had to kind of figure out.
What were your circumstances at the time? You know, where were you living? Who were you living with?
Well, at the time, I was with my ex-wife, or she was my wife at the time. I had a really good job. I was working in a motorcycle company. And yeah, I now all of a sudden found myself effectively paralysed in a wheelchair. I had to change jobs, had to change career. My home had become a prison. You know, it was all the weird things.
And what were the medical professionals telling you was your likely destiny at that point?
Well, that's the problem. They didn't know what had happened, so they didn't tell me anything. They just said, "Well, we don't really know what's happened. We think you've got a trapped nerve." So they tested me for that, and they didn't find any damage. Then they were like, "Oh, well, maybe you had a stroke in your sleep." So they tested me for that. And actually, it was 13 months later when I went to the doctor, and I was complaining about pain, and I had to see a different doctor because the one that I normally see wasn't in. And he said, "Describe the pain." And I said, "Well, the last time I was in pain like this, I had shingles." And he stopped dead, and he just went, "I think I know what's happened." And so we ended up going through tests, and yeah, I was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome, which is a damage to the sensory nerves.
But very rare.
Very rare. It's very rare that it happens to people like it did with me. It was, you know, I always try, because I work a lot with children, I always go like, look, this is not something that happens every day. You know, it's one of those things, but it's not something that happens every day.
Now, clearly, you've moved beyond being paralysed from the waist down. How did you go about making that happen? And I know it involved setting yourself some ridiculously challenging physical adventures.
I've been described many ways in my life. Stubborn is definitely one of them. I'd go to my physio, and she'd go, "Right, I want you to do like a couple of hours of physio," and she'd give me some exercises to do. I would do like 16 hours a week, and I'd go back, and she'd say, "How many hours a week did you do this week?" And I'd be like, 16. She said, "Jamie," I'd said a couple, and I was like, that is a couple. But I've always been one that sets myself goals and challenges and try to strive towards them. And I always had the goal of Everest, and that was always in my remit. I just had to figure out a way of achieving it.
But what are the things you've done? You know, I mean, we'll get to Everest. But yeah. I'm thinking about, you know, you climbed a mountain on your hands and knees.
Yes. So 2014, I had a real bout of depression because of my circumstances, and I took a drug overdose. Fortunately, I'm here, so I failed. One of probably the biggest failings I've ever made, but as a result, it's the lead to my success. So I set myself 12 challenges, one more extreme than the other. But that came about because I decided to climb Pen y Fan mountain in a wheelchair to become the second person ever to self-propel up it. I followed Paralympic world champion John Harris, which was quite cool. And then I remember being at the top and thinking, I can do anything I wanted to do.
So you used your wheelchair to complete this?
Yeah. For any of those that have ever climbed Pen y Fan, you'll know that there's 111 drainage trenches on the way up Pen y Fan. You may not know this. I do, because the one thing that I didn't put on my wheelchair at the time was brakes. So on the way down, I found every single one of them. So I did. I sat there and I went, you know what? I need to find myself. I need to find out who I am. And if this is the cards that I was going to get dealt with, I was going to play poker.
You said 12. You said, I think, 12 challenges in a year.
Yeah.
So, come on.
Oh, wow.
You've climbed a mountain now in a wheelchair.
So I jumped out of an airplane. I climbed a mountain on my hands. I completed a marathon. I hand cycled from Cardiff to Tenby, which is 100 miles. I did that in 13 hours. I went to a Christmas market. Now, most people wouldn't find that much of a big deal, but when you're in a wheelchair, it really is. And I decided to go to Birmingham Christmas Market because it's the busiest Christmas market in the country. And at the time, I got hit around the face with a mirror, slapped around the face with a basket, and I even got burnt with a cigarette. So it was probably one of the scariest challenges I ever did. But in that time, I raised £250,000 for charity.
No way.
Yeah. So I was very proud of that.
A £250,000 raised as a kind of a collateral benefit to you putting yourself back together.
Yeah. And breaking myself in the process, which is quite ironic.
And then, I mean, it's a story that it just, you know, it would make the plot of a film. 2017, you got laid low again, did you know?
Yeah, so 2017, my life kind of got twisted up and down again. So in January, and I often talk about this quite openly, I witnessed someone be completely honest with themselves. My ex-wife sat me down and said, I want a divorce. So I was like, right, okay, all right, figure that out. And then 6 weeks later, I got diagnosed with cancer. So
Jamie,
it took the heat off the divorce, in fairness. And then I moved back in with my mum because I was kind of struggling. I was going through chemo and I was kind of struggling. I was still playing basketball. I was playing squash at this point as well. Yeah, we'll come on to that. And so I moved back in with my mum, and then 2 weeks later I found my mum collapsed on the floor, and she got diagnosed, for her 66th birthday, she got diagnosed with a 3.5-inch brain tumour.
Can you believe this?
Yeah, you can't write 2017 really. So then me and my mum embarked on this journey of treatment, and
you supported one another. Were you not timing your treatments so that when one was laid low, the other could be doing their best to support the other?
It's certainly a bond between a mother and a son that not many people get to experience, but it's certainly one that I will hold dear for the rest of my life. And my mum is, I mean, let me tell you, my mum's a complete hero, right? You think I've been through it. My mum's had cancer 5 times. Coccygeal septic ischemic meningitis, 3 heart attacks, and a brain tumour. And she still walks, she's 70, and she still walks 4 miles a day, every day, rain, hail or shine. So I don't think the fruit's fallen that far from the tree, if I want to be fair.
John, you said it would make a great film. I don't think any film studio would take it and say, get out of here, it's too far-fetched. It's all genuine, it's an amazing story.
But it's funny because people say that a lot, but for me, it's just life, right?
I have to ask you, it's a stupid question in many ways, but I have to ask you, what have you learned? Because you have been through something that, I don't know what percentile go through. What have you got from what you have faced up to? Great
question. Far from a stupid question, actually. And it's a lesson, it's a message that I give all young people out there, right? I've learned 2 major lessons. First off, it doesn't matter what you do in life, you will fail. Okay? Yeah. And it is that path of failure that will help you and assist you to get to success. And that's the first lesson I always teach young people. Don't be frightened of failure. Embrace it. Learn from it. Do it differently. That's the first lesson. The second lesson I've learned is you will fall over in life, but you've got to get back up. Because falling over is not a problem. There's nothing wrong with falling over. It's when you stay down is the problem. You've got to get back up. You've got to retry. You've got to soldier on. And that's the lesson that I try and teach anybody who'll be willing to listen to me.
Now, you mentioned at the top of your of the description of what's been going on, Everest. You raised the spectre of Everest. So, seriously?
Yeah, seriously. I've wanted to climb Everest since I was 7 years old, and when I was 33, I woke up paralysed. And one of the first things I said to myself was, why didn't I do all the things that I should have done before this point? And that was always my driver. So I remember when I went to the physio, she said, you need a goal. We need to give you a goal. What's your goal? And I said, I've got one, Everest. And she genuinely just went, let's get you standing first, maybe walking across the room, and then we'll look at where you go from there.
We'll shoot for the moon.
Yeah, and I went, and then we'll climb Everest. 6 months later, I climbed Penny Van on crutches under my own steam. And it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
Fraser, why haven't you climbed Everest? Why haven't you, or maybe you have jumped out the back of an aeroplane, I don't know.
I haven't. I mean, I'm maybe not the kind of endurance type. I don't willingly throw myself into those kinds of situations, I guess.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, it's absolutely astonishing and incredible.
Thank you.
John, stories like Jamie's, they often make me wonder what I've been doing with my time. Do you know? I think how you've done these things, apparently unencumbered by the challenges that have been put in the obstacles that have been put in your path by Mother Nature, and you've still climbed mountains, raised £250,000 for charity, jumped out the back of an aeroplane, played squash against able-bodied people. Didn't you?
So I was asked. So I played basketball for Cardiff Celts already, and then I transferred over and started playing for Cardiff Archers, who I play for now. I was signed and I played Welsh rugby within the Wheelchair Six Nations back in 2014. I hand cycled for South Wales, which is where I competed in the Car 10. Then I took up archery.
Of course you did.
Yeah, because why not? But actually archery, believe it or not, is much easier in a chair than it is stood up, right? Because you only have to worry about half your body. And actually I found I was quite good at it. So I started playing archery, and then the world became my oyster.
There's something that I've read, that the universe doesn't give you any weight to carry that you can't carry. That the universe gives you what you can carry. And you clearly, you haven't been knocked back. Well, you have.
I have.
You've absorbed the hit.
Taken it,
and moved forward. Tell us more about how you're going to approach Everest, because that's a logistical and financial challenge.
It is.
Full stop.
It is, yeah. But I tell you what I'm going to do, Neil. I'm just going to finish the squash quickly, because I have to give a shout out to the squash club. I started playing squash in wheelchair, and it wasn't good enough. I wanted to compete, and my coach went, well, we'll make you compete then. And then I started playing squash on crutches, and then went on to play on calipers. And then I played in the Welsh Open, and then I got qualified and played in the European Open. And at both times, I've been the only person with a low body impairment to play in both tournaments. I never won, and that's another lesson I've always tried to teach. I never won. But what I did was I scored points, and those were little wins, and I always celebrated the little wins. And going forward now with Everest, it's exactly the same. I don't know if I'm going to get it. I hope I am. I'm all set up.
What is it you're actually specifically seeking to do? What is your goal on Everest?
To raise awareness for complex regional pain syndrome. I mean, if I had found out that I had it 6 weeks after I ruptured my spine, my condition could have been turned around. But because the medical sort of practice doesn't know a great deal about it, and so my aim with Everest is to say, look, this is a condition that affects millions of people, and we need to know more about it. We need to investigate it more. We need to study it more. And the other thing that I want to achieve is, if one person, and I only need one person to consider myself successful, if one person says, do you know what, I did this because I've seen some guy on crutches climb Everest, then that I've reached my goal. And that's all I aim for. So it's a lifelong dream for me, but it's also, it's about the message. It's about the message that it doesn't matter what life throws at you. If you want to do something, you can. And
you mentioned earlier the motorhome, the camper van.
Yeah.
Do you think that was always in you? Were you a nomadic, restless, itchy-footed person anyway?
Highly potentially, yeah. When I got diagnosed with cancer, everyone said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to buy a van and build a camper van. And they said, but you can't even hang a shelf. I said, well, exactly, so this is a good time to learn. And that's exactly what it did. So my camper van, my first camper van, got me through chemo, really. And then I wrote it off in Scotland, through to bad weather. I don't have to tell you anything about bad Scottish weather.
Just the wrong clothes, Jamie.
Yeah.
Bad weather.
Apparently I had the wrong tyres. It wasn't the wrong road. But yeah, so then we bought a new one, which is, we now have a Mercedes Sprinter. And yeah, I absolutely love it, me and my wife. And we've got a dog, our Labradoodle. And we go anywhere we can to see, the UK is a beautiful place. And we're very, very privileged to have it on our doorstep. And my aim is to see as much of it as possible.
Jamie, we are privileged to have you with us tonight, and we're privileged to hear your story. When I hear stories like yours, and I haven't heard a better story
bless you.
amongst
Thank
the
you.
stories that I have heard, but when I hear stories like you, it's like a break in the clouds, and it says something about what it is to be human and alive, and how there is always positive to be sought, there is always hope. And I just want to shake your hand.
Thank you very much, Neil.
You're
Absolute
a fine
pleasure.
chap,
It
Jamie. Thanks
means
for
a great
being
deal
with
to me.
us. Lovely.